ANC's policy conference is officially underway in Newzroom, where Stephen is just speaking to us from. Among the issues that are expected to be discussed, and we've been looking at this in quite extensive coverage today, is the issue around our electricity crisis. Members will make recommendations on alternative energy plans to assist Eskom. For more on this, we can speak to another energy expert, Professor Sampson Mamphweli. Prof, a very good afternoon to you. Thank you so much for your time and patience today. The issue of a just energy transition, key to the future of energy in South Africa and the broader conversation about climate change. Explain in the easiest terms for South Africans observing this what that would actually mean if we're to move in that direction speedily.
Good evening or afternoon, Tebekile and the viewers. The issue of just energy transition features prominently in the policy discussion document. Now, if we are to move speedily, then the consequences of that, some people will be affected, especially workers in the coal or fossil fuels industry. And we must remember that the industry itself has got upstream and downstream processes where there are a number of economic activities. So the transition needs to be planned properly and appropriately in line with the fact that we've got people employed in the sector. I've gone through the policy document in detail. It's basically a copycat of the major part of the president's address a few days ago when he was dealing with the electricity crisis. It reaffirms the integrated resource plan as the country's energy plan. It calls for the diversification of the energy sources. It calls for rapid kind of implementation of various measures without going into the details of some of the measures that the president has announced himself. There's a direct kind of link between what the president said and what is contained in the policy discussion document.
And diversification, of course, of a country's energy sources is not an original idea. The world over, this is an ongoing conversation. Why have we failed to implement that in years prior, especially when you consider that the warning shot around load shedding came about 15 years ago?
So the diversification came first through the Integrated Resource Plan 2010, and then there were delays. First, there were delays in the promulgation of the Integrated Resource Plan, and then there were delays in its implementation, and then it was reviewed in 2019, and then Minister Mantashe started implementing it. The ANC policy document says something that the president said a few days ago in terms of the integrated resource plan, which I've also said before even the president said it, that the integrated resource plan in its current form is outdated, is obsolete. It has been overtaken by events. We've got a lot more activities that the integrated resource plan did not envisage that they will happen in terms of what the government has done in response to the energy crisis. And there are currently efforts to revise the IRP. There are issues such as the aging power plants. There are issues around the cost of generation, LPET technology in terms of the various technologies. The costs are going down. That's why even when the president made the announcement, he said that when we go into bid window 6, for instance, instead of delaying some of the generation capacity that the government wants to purchase in bid window 7, we should then bring those back to bid window 6. So instead of 2,600 megawatts, bid window 6 is going to request for 5,100 megawatts. And this is exactly what the ANC policy discussion document says. It says there must be expedition of the procurement of this electricity. There must be expedition of environmental authorization, which the president spoke about, which the Minister of Environmental Affairs has already hit the ground running, trying to implement.
And how much would we have to, Prof, rely on our neighbors if all of that is to work out? I mean, now we're leaning and dipping into resources possibly from countries such as Botswana. There's been the long-standing Kahora Bassa electricity issue as well.
Yeah, so in terms of the neighboring countries, we can't get much there, unfortunately. South Africa is the major contributor in the entire continent in terms of electricity. We produce more than 40% of the electricity consumed in the entire continent. In terms of Botswana, they can give us about 200, 300 megawatts. That's a drop in the ocean. We produce 51 times more than what Botswana produces. They do have a little bit of excess, but that's mainly during the weekends when we don't need it. So that particular arrangement needs to be looked into very carefully in terms of what we buy from Botswana. Otherwise, we'll be buying electricity that we don't need, which will become wasteful expenditure. In terms of other countries, yes.
No, Prof, please finish your point.
Yes, in terms of other countries, the only country that gives us some good electricity is Mozambique through where we buy from the Kahora Bassa dam. We always have problems when the lines have got problems and things like that, but we're getting a good plus or minus 2,000 megawatts from them.
And there appears to be a shift in the global energy conversation, even though especially the Western countries aren't speaking about it explicitly. They've been reliant on Russian energy resources. That is now seemingly becoming a problem because of the back and forth since they imposed sanctions on Russia for its invasion of Ukraine. Coal back on the table in the last 2 weeks or so as a potential means to help for us. The goal to get rid of coal as part of our energy mix. How far are we from that point?
So the European countries, yes, you're right, they planned their transition with the Russian gas in mind. I'm always interacting with our colleagues in Europe, and I've been there as well. With the Russian-Ukraine war, most countries are looking at coal as a kind of a short-term solution in a short-term to medium-term kind of a situation. And they are busy building big renewable energy systems. And I remember one of my friends who live in Austria that we involved in a project together telling me that to them Putin is a very big kind of friend of renewable energy because he indirectly pushed the European countries to go into renewable energy. Coming back home, it's important that battle is basically saying to us, we need energy independence. We need to be independent of the Europeans as Africa in terms of energy. And here I'm talking about energy in general, including the fuels. Because if we're not independent, something that happens elsewhere affects what is happening here. The one thing that I'm liking about the ANC discussion document policy is that it also calls for 10% contribution of biofuels into our fuels industry, which is quite good because we've got the resources. So Africa has got the resources. We've got gas, we've got biofuels, we've got the sun. Our sun is way much better compared to the sun in countries like Germany, for instance. But you drive around Germany, every household has got solar panels in the roof because they took that the renewable energy seriously and they had very good feed-in tariffs, which is, by the way, some of the things that the president announced in his speech a few days ago, that we're going to have to allow households to feed into the grid, and we'll have feed-in tariffs. What we're investigating now is what form and shape should those feed-in tariffs take.
Professor Sampson Mamphweli, always a pleasure to have your time, sir. Thank you very much for being on Newzroom Afrika. Today you're watching an extended edition of Newsfeed PM, focusing, as we let the Prof go, today on the ANC Policy Conference, its 6th National Policy Conference, underway at the Newzroom Expo Center here in Johannesburg.